Chapter 4, Section 3, Spitima, Zarathustra's Theology and Philosophy, and their influence on the development of the Parsi religion. Having shown in the preceding section the historical origin of the Zoroastrian religion, we may proceed next to consider the new ideas, theological and philosophical, which Spitima Zarathustra introduced into the world, and in consequence of which he may be said to have become the founder of a new religion, and to have exercised a lasting influence on the history of the human mind. His real doctrines, untouched by the speculations of latter ages, can be learned only from the older Yasna, chiefly from the Gathas. The leading idea of his theology was monotheism, i.e., that there are not many gods, but only one, and the principle of his speculative philosophy was dualism, i.e., the supposition of two primeval causes of the real world and of the intellectual, while his moral philosophy was moving in the triad of thought, word, and deed. Having regarded the earlier period, at which he must have lived long before the Greeks were acquainted with anything like philosophical speculation, we cannot expect him to have established a complete and developed system of philosophical thoughts, which cannot even be said of Plato, but the few philosophical ideas which may be discovered in his sayings show that he was a great and deep thinker who stood far above his contemporaries and even above the most enlightened men of many subsequent centuries. The great fame he enjoyed, and even with the ancient Greeks and Romans, who were so proud of their own learning and wisdom, is a sufficient proof of the high and preeminent position he must once have occupied in the history of the progress of the human mind. There's reason to think that if we look back at an uncorrupted version of his transmission, we will find more reason to think that he excelled what was being done by the poets and the philosophers and other thinkers, that more things about the revelation than have been previously pointed out, like some of the scientific facts that seem buried in things. It's like, how did he know this? I mean, even nowadays with modern instruments, we may not hear of some of these things, or we may not quite understand this yet, and then another 10 years we're going to understand it. It's important not to harshly judge a prophetic figure because of what was done after him, if you're not sure of this issue. You find an issue, but then you say, well, the tradition's corrupted. Or maybe there was a context in that culture that's different than the context this thing would be in our culture.